again, it's the long game. Like, we didn't just meet and we were like, everything is so easy and simple and seamless and effortless. Yes, the sparks did fly when we met, but no, it was not just, lazy river cruising.
This is true. Is it lazy river cruising right now?
No.
I didn't know what you were going to say, but that's funny. It's definitely not lazy river cruising.
Welcome to Something More Human. I'm Sam.
And I'm Elliot. We're a married couple exploring human connection and its impact on ours, our guests, and our listeners' lives.
Join us in creating something more human.
Okay, I'm ready.
Welcome back to the Something More Human podcast. We are so excited to have you here. And on the theme of this episode, I also want to say I'm so excited to have you here because coming out of the episode with Kae and Mel, we talked a little bit about don't water yourself down. And we always tell our guests, we're so excited to have you here, but I'm excited to have you here, even though the podcast wouldn't happen without you because we're co-hosts.
Excited to have me here in my own living room.
Yes, I'm excited to have you here, and I'm excited to be doing this together with you.
I'm excited to have you as well.
Great.
Welcome.
So in this episode, we're going to talk a little bit about our reflections and takeaways from episodes 1 and 2, and what that has looked like for us, what it might look like moving forward, and how we're challenging you as the listener or viewer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were thinking of, ways to present the podcast and how to sort of structure it. And we thought, having a couple episodes of interviews and then having this to sort of look back on and maybe tell the audience a little bit about what you and I learned and how we could take that information moving forward. So I think this is a good
structure.
I think it's a good structure. Yeah, I really
I'm excited about it.
And we'll see. I think these will be obviously much shorter, but I think that'll be a nice little break in between the longer ones. So I'm excited for this episode, actually. I'm really excited about it.
Me too. So let's start first with our interview with Kae and Mel. I want to pull out a couple of the themes from that episode. And the first one we started talking about was proximity and kind of trying to answer the question, what does new friendship look like? And what does continued friendship look like if proximity is not the driving factor? And a couple of things that we pulled out from that were analog methods of communication, like writing letters and channeling your pen pal self. Consistency was a really big one. Reaching out when you think of someone. I think that one kind of helps balance consistency because life is busy, right? Like straight up consistency is hard sometimes, especially when it comes to communication, especially when it comes to like shooting the shit with your friends. So reaching out when you think of someone, even if it's small, like, hey, I saw this book in the store, it made me think of you. Or, Kay, I did my hair like this, made me think of you. Did I text her this morning? You bet I did.
Nice.
Sent her a pic. So that was a one that stuck with me. And then also being present. So even if we're physically proximate, we're in the same space together, if we're not both present, that connection is superficial, right? Like if your mind is going in a million directions and you're not actually here with me mentally, it doesn't matter that we're physically close. Yeah, I mean, it's good to bring up because Kae, was talking about, her own husband, her relationship to her husband in proximity to their house and how, even in the same household, sometimes you're just like ships in the night, you're just missing one another. And I don't know how many times we're going to say this word. I mean, maybe we'll be able to look at some metrics with AI and see how many times we say the word intention. But I think that is like the key theme, at least of the last 3 episodes, including this one, is intention. And basically what I'm just saying is like the proximity things, is important, but you have to be intentional even with the person that you're in the same house with in order to connect with them. That's, that takes work and attention. So yeah, I really like the analog connection method. So that, for those of you who didn't quite listen to that episode, she was talking about pen pals that she had, friends that she had made in Vienna, and she was writing physical letters to them, and that helped her feel close to them. And I think that's such a cool idea. The further we get into tech, I think that there's more need for the things on the other side, which are physical written letters. That we used to do that when we first met. That's true.
We had like several notebooks filled up, and we would write to each other before, I think like leading up to our marriage. right? Those are somewhere.
Oh, no, I think that we did
Past it?
well into our first couple of years of marriage.
And I think that was pretty powerful.
I agree. And I also think, like, yes, our phones can keep a record of, like, every text message we've ever sent each other. But having a physical document that we sat down with intention to write in and now we have as a keepsake is totally different and a really kind of sweet thing for us to reflect on.
Yeah. I don't know if this is corny or not, but I guess it doesn't matter. But even just seeing that person's penmanship, there's a connection there that is like almost like otherworldly for me. Like seeing your penmanship makes me feel you a little bit more than like reading a text message. You know what I mean? Because that text message is blue and it's the same font as every other person I get a text message from.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So
another huge theme coming out of that episode was kind of leaning on the cliche, like you can't pour from an empty cup, and connection to yourself is what allows you to connect with other people. And we talked a lot about therapy, in that episode. And if you guys didn't catch that, we are huge proponents of therapy, individual therapy, couples therapy, marriage therapy, talk therapy, EMDR, like whatever the modality is. We're big fans. And something that I thought was really profound that you said in that episode was around if you practice vulnerability and you practice connecting to other people, like literally just socializing, then that might also open you up to the possibilities of therapy, like practicing the muscle of connecting with someone else, being vulnerable, tapping into that side of yourself.
I think words like, I'm thinking of the audience and like when you or a male who's going through it and wants therapy, just hasn't done it yet. And then you're talking about like the practice of being vulnerable, like simple words, but like, what does that really mean? And so I think kind of explaining that might be beneficial for both of us and for the viewers. But, like for me, like we talked about in that episode as well, like if small things, like if you're thinking of someone, like just reach out to them. If you're thinking about them and you miss them or you love them and something makes you think of them and like you just spoke about your hair, reminded you of Kae, and so you sent her a message, that means something to her,
Yeah, and I think it's like, fuck it if it's corny.
Yeah,
like
exactly. I totally agree with that. Yeah, so especially for, male friendships, if you think of them, call them. If you think of them, just shoot them a quick text. And basically what I'm saying is that to me is like a start. Like, well, okay, like what do you mean, Elliot? Like what is being vulnerable? Like what do I do? To me, it's something simple like that, And I think that opens the door, and that sort of tells the other person too a little bit about, where you are and maybe what, maybe it opens the door for them to sort of reciprocate that vulnerability. You know what I mean? So it always starts with you. So
I think that's an interesting point you're making around a question that we didn't really answer in that episode, but we did ask, which is, especially in regard to men, how do we affect change on a large scale? And like, how do we open the doors and open our arms to model for men that like, we want everyone to be vulnerable and it's safe for you specifically to be vulnerable, and that like upholding this like machismo status quo is not doing anyone any good. And I think as I reflect on that episode and as I think about kind of how you go about the world, it's definitely a lead by example, and like a drop in the bucket eventually overflows. So practicing those small things of like, we're going out and having conversations and trying to be vulnerable, like going there in those conversations, even though it could be kind of uncomfortable, or reaching out to that person, even though it feels corny or cringy, like doing those things and leading by example may not affect change right now in this moment, but 5 years when we look back, how many lives will one person have touched? And then how many lives do all those people's lives also touch?
I think that to some people, like it literally seems like a magic pill, and those usually don't work, right? Like things, if it's too good to be true, it's
like therapy
usually not.
Seems like a magic pill?
Yeah, and it is, and that's exactly what it is in my opinion. And there are other things that we could talk about specifically that I don't want to get boring about. But basically, like some people do go, like a lot of people do go to therapy, but they try it once, they find someone, they don't vibe, and they just stop. And you do have to find the right person. Like it has to be someone that you can, that not even, I guess, yeah, definitely that you can trust, but someone that you can just get along with, outside conversation, not just about your personal matters. So anyway, yeah, so we we've got a new friend here in Denver, and we went out to for drinks with him and their partner, and talking about like childhood trauma. And he just seemed pretty apprehensive about the idea of therapy. And I think like my role in that relationship is to be like as vulnerable with him as I can. And just sort of, tell him my experience with therapy, because I think that it could definitely, help him and change his life.
Yeah. And like your story of therapy and that it isn't a blue pill. Like, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit about people think it's a magic pill. Because I think on one hand, I see your perspective that like, well, if it was that easy, everyone would do it. Or like, I tried one time and it didn't work. But the other side of that coin is it is a long game. Like most things that are worthwhile in life, like it is finding that right therapist that you vibe with. And we're just humans, and sometimes the vibe is right and sometimes it's not. So being persistent that you find the person where the vibe is right.
Yeah.
And then like, I don't know that I can think of anyone off the top of my head who has gone to therapy, seen results, and it not be less than 12 months, 24 months, 3-5 years. Like it is really that long game and that consistency. And I think if you can shift your perspective that most things in life have that element to them, whether it's marriage, whether it's friendship, whether it's fitness, diet, health overall, meditation, mindfulness, like literally whatever it is, that element is a through line.
Totally.
I just want to like pull on the thread that is social media is a highlight reel. We all know that. Cognitively, we understand that. But emotionally, I think that we forget really often. And so I know that there are a lot of people who see our relationship and they're like, oh man, I wish I could just find the right person that like things just click, the sparks just fly. It's so easy and seamless. Like it is work. It is so much work. And we've been able to see the direction that we're going, and we've decided that work would be worth it. Sometimes it's not, but it's the long game. Like we didn't just meet and we were like, everything is so easy and simple and seamless and effortless. Yes, the sparks did fly when we met, but no, it was not just, lazy river cruising.
This is true. Is it lazy river cruising right now?
No.
I didn't know what you were going to say, but that's funny. It's definitely not lazy river cruising.
It's easier. I would say we're like kayaking in a bay now, and we're not like trying to surf in frigid water with giant waves, and neither of us know how to surf. Like the climate has changed, but I don't know. It
just takes work. Yeah. It just takes a lot of work, Coexisting with anybody in the same house is a lot of work, especially when you're romantically involved.
Yeah, and I will also zoom out and say that a huge point of us talking about our relationship is that there was an element for each of us that we did individual therapy. So we did this. You can't bring your best self to the table if you're not actively working on yourself. You can't pour from an empty cup. So whether you're looking for a romantic relationship, whether you're looking for deep friendships, whether you're looking to expand the ones you have or start new ones, I do really think that like watering your own seed is an excellent place to start. And if you're not sure where to start with that. Like go find a therapist. Google therapists in my area or like XYZ insurance therapy.
But what we spoke about at the end of Kae and Mel's episode was like, everything exists on YouTube. So if you're not ready to take that step, or maybe you can't afford it, maybe you don't have health insurance, like that's something that we're not talking about is is the means. Like some people just can't afford it. Some people don't have the insurance to cover it. And but if you're skeptical, like just YouTube like what a typical therapy session might look like. And I think even that can really serve as a catalyst to get on the phone and make that call, or at least log on to your provider and figure out who's in your network,
Or even the free apps out there. I really, really love Insight Timer. And it's free, and it's something that I've used for the last 2+ years. I listen to the same 3 meditations. So once you find the thing that you like, there are lots of avenues. I like that you're bringing up, not everybody has the time or the means or the insurance or the whatever. There are options out there. So get your feet wet. Maybe it's a free meditation app. Maybe it's a YouTube video on like, what the fuck did therapists teach you? Maybe it's watching a group therapy session, you know, whatever it may be. I think that's one thing that we, as Sam and Elliot, are encouraging you, the listener viewer, to get out and do literally this week.
Totally, I agree.
Before we transition to talking a little bit more about our episode with Tess and Nadia, I want to kind of do rapid fire speed round of the tips and tricks and themes coming out of our episode with Mel and Kae. A huge one was be present and act. So we talked about guiding momentum is always going to be easier than getting started. If you're feeling like it's difficult, it is. Getting started is the hardest part, and showing up is the hardest part.
Whoops. Is that an outtake? What I wanted to say about that is I think one of the best parts about our marriage, and maybe people, it seems like in conversations, like people think that being the complete opposite of somebody is like a recipe for disaster in a relationship. Like, oh, we just don't have anything in common. And like you and I are sort of there. Like we do obviously have things in common, but like we're so opposite in so many ways. And I'm trying to relate this directly, but the idea of being present, like I am on one end of that and you're on the other, right? Like you are very present and goal oriented, and it's like what, you know, one foot in front of the other, and it's not looking, you know, back at the step that you took. And I'm always sort of reflecting and ruminating. And basically what I'm trying to say is, yeah, you know, the importance of presence is like such a big deal, especially just in the last few weeks of my life, like thinking about, you know, how important and powerful it is to have time to yourself to like meditate and just to be with yourself physically and let yourself observe your thoughts. And there's a lot of power in that, you know, and seeing our trajectories since we've gotten married, you know, like your path has sort of shot up a lot quicker than mine. And I think a lot of that has to do with presence of mind, you know, being intentional. And I think those are two of the same things. And so I think it's just a beautiful thing to see in our marriage, and to give that advice for people is like presence of mind is really important. And I think that, you know, my enemy is definitely my phone, and that completely takes, you know, our presence away, and everyone struggles with that. So, you know, that would be like a tip that I would give myself and the viewers is just, you know, spend more time being uncomfortable, like spend more time
quiet.
Yeah. Spend more time and, you know, give yourself, you know, schedule yourself some quiet time. And you do that every morning before I wake up, and you're doing that at night now. Yeah.
I would almost argue that just one thing, even if it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, there are some mornings like this morning where I wake up and I do my routine, which is the same thing I do every single morning. But there are just some mornings where I finish my meditation, or I listen to a podcast, or something about the combination of things I do in the morning just fires me the fuck up. And I'm like the Hulk ready to take on the day. And that's exactly what I'm talking about when I say it's going to be easier to guide the momentum than it is to get started, to go from zero. And the little baby steps are still starting.
Yeah. What I will say about that is, so yeah, our schedule is, you know, I stay up later and then I get up, you know, a lot later than Sam does. Sam will get up at 6 or 6:30 in the morning. And this morning, you know, you got up and then you came in the room and I was just getting out of bed and there was like an energy and I was like, okay, this is going to be a good morning. I could tell. And it's small things like that could set up the rest of the day. Cause I think yesterday we got up to a bad start. I don't remember how, but maybe the energy just wasn't there. But you came in the bedroom this morning and like sat down next to me, and I could just tell. I was like, oh, she had like a great morning of meditating and visualizing. And, you know, I knew that you had gotten a lot of things done, and it's just powerful. Like those small things are like, you know, it's a snowball effect. And so now we're here doing the podcast, the vibes are good. And I think it started with, you know, with you this morning, taking time to yourself to be present.
I think a point that you're making too is like, okay, I'm doing that work on myself, right? And whether it's in the context of our romantic relationship or it's in the context of like us being besties, it affects you, right? It then inspires you. It then lets you know, okay, I can have a great day too. Like it's infectious, and that that internal, I don't know if it's awakening or work or whatever, like it does infect the people around you. And then you're attracting people, right, who want to be around that, who also want to do that. And then I think that that's a way that you find yourself in a community of people that you love, right?
For sure.
If you're always shit talking, if you're always complaining, if you're always finding something wrong with the situation or the service or the product or the whatever.
She is definitely calling me out.
Like the vibes are bad and it's going to be more difficult to recover from that. I could really talk about this for an entire podcast episode, and
Maybe
so
we
I'll
should sometime.
Yeah, maybe we should jot this down. So I'll kind of scale back, but I could not be more passionate about one small thing for yourself to water that seed has massive impact, whether it's just motivation, getting moving, the people around you, your vibe for the day, whatever. Like it really does matter.
Yeah. I know that we're trying to go down the list, but
I know that wasn't rapid fire.
No, it's not. And I think that's okay. And I feel like I'm not trying to be meta or self-reflective in front of the audience, but like, I think that these moments are the moments that people are going to
resonate with.
Yeah. But like crave in our podcast, in our conversation about like, cause I'm struggling with being like proud of our relationship and also humble. Like you keep talking about, like, we have so many friends that are like, you guys have like the quintessential, like perfect marriage. Obviously
like
that's not true. And they know that. They know that's not perfect, but we hear that a lot. There's something about us that they really like. And I think like getting those kernels of truth, those nuggets are what people are really going to crave.
Besides, it's hard. It's work.
Well, not that I was feeling like the conversation so far has been superficial, but I'm kind of like trying to, like, my brain is so fucking everywhere. I'm trying to like focus. But as soon as we start talking about specific things in our marriage, I'm like, okay, this is what this podcast is about.
Sure.
Like this podcast is about you and me, you know, and like the magic and how we share that with other people.
We also talked a little bit about being authentic and not overthinking it. I'm going to collapse. Don't overthink it. Get out of your comfort zone and be authentic all into one, because I think the thread of, if it's corny, who cares? If it's cheesy, who cares? If it's cringy, who cares? If you're thinking about someone, just reach out to them. If you're not able to be consistent, but you still reach out when you think of them, to me, that still holds weight. That's still impactful. That still matters. And the edges of your comfort zone, especially when it comes to making new friendships, those edges are where expansion and growth happens. So maybe you're at a bar, maybe you're at your favorite coffee shop, and you talk to a stranger. Like, a really profound moment of realization in that episode was how powerful and impactful coffee shops have been in our lives and in the lives of people we love when it comes to making connections.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I have a friend who is like he's like a, you know, very, very extroverted and, you know, is all about connection and wants to make new friends. And he's been trying to find a job that he really enjoys, that's fulfilling. And I told him over and over again, like, this job is meant for you. Like a coffee shop is meant for you, you know, for that reason alone. Because I think that the most of our friends that we have now, maybe not most, but a lot of the friends that we have now, we've like met in coffee shops. A lot of like the like realizations I've had and like chance occurrences I've had have been at coffee shops. I have a friend whose name is Jack, and actually his poetry book is sitting on our coffee table. And he's like, you met him right before when we were in Albuquerque last time visiting. He's like 70, 75 years old. And I'm literally friends with the 75-year-old that I met at a coffee shop. Like, that is a beautiful thing, you know?
And he gifted you a book of his own poetry, which was very touching for you.
Yeah, it's amazing. We've shared some notes, and he's learning French. So we told him we're going to France.
Oh, yeah.
So next time we come back after that, I'll have to talk to him about it. But
you'll have to speak to him in French.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, probably not, but I'll do my best.
Okay, so the theme that I feel like has been super impactful, very, very big, if I were to look at like a map of words and the size, do you know what these word maps I'm talking about? Basically, if you look at a map of words and the size of the word is determined by the frequency that it was used. Right. I think intention would be the biggest word on the map so far in this podcast.
I already said that earlier, didn't I? How many times that word's come up? Probably too many. Probably 100.
And I think that's the segue from one episode to another, because we talked about intention in totally different ways, in totally different contexts, from totally different perspectives between the two episodes. And moving into Nadia and Tess's episode, we really started talking about intention with respect to how are you conducting yourself in a community of other makers, shop owners, in a physical community that's historic, right? Old Town in Albuquerque is a really historic neighborhood, a well-known neighborhood, a hub for new people and visitors to come to. And so what does intention look like, not just in making new friends, but also building business relationships and customer relationships?
Yeah, I feel like that episode was sort of a masterclass for people who are, looking to open a brick and mortar. I mean, and I can just tell by that conversation that, like they're setting themselves up for success, but with that intention, with that community aspect in mind. And I think that the beautiful part about that conversation was, they're sort of competitors in a way,
They could be, sure.
They could be, but they, through communication and I think through, vulnerability in their own ways, they've realized that, like you've said many times, like a high tide raises all boats. And so I think this theme of like human connection and intentionality is like what is making them successful and what will continue to make them successful.
I couldn't agree more. I have some notes about lack of community and lack of connection is what fosters competition.
We talked about that quite a bit, yeah.
And in a place like Old Town, or even in a place where you're kind of in a community of brick and mortar that could have a similar vibe, a similar selection of items, that taking that human element and just going in and meeting the shop owner and building that connection, I think that's what really squashes competition and opens you up to these themes that we've already been talking about, like vulnerability, like collaboration, like we even talked a little bit about ego, right? Like if you meet the other person, it helps both you stay grounded, right? Because they're just literally another person like you are, and opens you up to, oh, well, this person and I are really getting along. Maybe we can bounce ideas off of each other. Maybe we can be collaborative. So it keeps you tethered to earth and opens you up for all of the possibilities and doors that can get unlocked when you have a community around you.
I agree. Never want to get political on our podcast, but I think that we talked about that with Kae and Mel, that in my opinion, like, well, America is obviously a very individualistic culture, and it sort of fosters those, I think that is competition is a result of that culture, right?
Sure.
And so I think fostering the opposite mindset of, of community, like-mindedness is like a big deal. And obviously in their instance is going to benefit them greatly in business and in life. And I just want to harp on that as much as we can, that nothing good comes from an individualistic culture. Nothing at all.
Yeah, from like work in a silo.
Yeah. I agree with you. I just, talking about even, your journey and functional movement with Rearm and my journey with photography, it's very obvious, if there's not a like relationship set, like competition exists. And if like once that barrier is broken, the competition's gone, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. And it's also something we didn't really get deep in. We kind of just scratched the surface of, which is at the highest level, like referrals, right? But deeper than that, it's the network is strengthened with more people in it.
Right.
So even if we could be direct competitors, if we're collaborating, there's a world in which we differentiate ourselves from each other and create a stronger kind of symbiotic bond back and forth, where we say, oh, you really want a handmade candle? Tess has it. Oh, you really want a handmade pair of pants? Nadia has it. Boom. And this depth of, I'm imagining like a spider web, like the silk gets a little bit thicker. And that's something I think that in a new city, you and I are looking to break those doors down and meet people. And it can be uncomfortable sometimes. Like, there's an entrepreneur meetup. We're going to go. We don't know anybody. But that's how people start, right? Is you walk in and you don't know the other person. And if it doesn't go well, totally fine. And if it does go well, what do you have to gain, you know?
Right. Yeah. And I think for the audience, we can hold ourselves accountable in public about that exactly.
Going to some of those things.
Going to those events. I think that, we haven't really quite gotten there yet in Denver, but we've also been incredibly busy, which I don't think is ever an excuse. But I think
not just busy, but like literally physically not in Denver,
right.
Traveling a lot.
Right. So, we'll definitely take our own advice and be more intentional about meeting people in physical space.
Yeah.
Because that's very important. So, and we did do that. I mean, I went to that photo meetup that only ended up becoming one person, but that was okay. We met a new guy and he was really cool, and we exchanged ideas and information. And so that's just, not like it's like a notch in a bedpost or something, but like it's one more. Is that only sexual? Notch in a bedpost?
I think it might.
Is it?
I mean, that's what I think of.
That's really funny. I can't believe I said that. I didn't know of another.
We can say it in a very entrepreneurial, business-minded way.
Maybe I'll just take that and make it my own. I'm just saying, like, we've added a person to our network, but it's not just a number,
This goes back to the point that I'm harping on, which might just be the theme of this episode for me, which is, even though this meetup ended up being one person, I was really inspired.
Me too.
Right? So then that one thing that was us driving 3 minutes to the park, meeting this guy, chatting with him for an hour.
The weather was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, that one thing, which was a little bit of discomfort, a little bit on the edge of my comfort zone and your comfort zone. We thought about, what if we just don't go? Blame it on the rain. That one thing inspired us to, join a different Facebook group for young entrepreneurs. That will be the catalyst for us going to the next event. Right.
And it's always those things. It's always like the relationships you establish one at a time that are the reason that you get a referral. Like, the referral doesn't come from nowhere. A referral comes from someone that who you've met, who enjoys your company, who you've exchanged ideas with, and you've broken down that wall. And so, like, eventually somewhere down the line, probably he's going to get a referral from me and vice versa. Yeah. And that's going to lead to, to money and more relationships established. Right. And it's just this snowball effect,
Honestly, it's like a video game, right? Like, you go talk to the farmer, and the farmer gives you a tomato, and you take the tomato to the grower's market. And the grower's market, you meet this person, and this person unlocks the door for that person, and they give you a key to a portal, to a this. It's this huge snowball, which is, if you don't take the time for these seemingly small interactions, you don't get the secret sauce for the next thing. You know what I mean? Like, Brett told us about this other entrepreneur meetup group, which is not just photographers, which I'm really fired up to go to. I have no idea what's going to transpire out of that. I wouldn't have even known about it had we not gone to this photo meetup. So all those little things matter. I also want to do a quick rapid fire, for real this time, rapid fire of themes, action items, tips, tricks coming out of the episode with Tess and Nadia. Something we talked about was, of course, intention. We also talked about the head, the heart, the gut. And we did talk a little bit about the gut with Kae and Mel around trusting yourself. And I know that you brought up, sometimes my gut's wrong. Sometimes I don't feel like I can trust myself. And I think that this investment in self, right? This investment in spending quiet time with yourself, spending time meditating or therapy or whatever the thing is that looks like you investing in yourself, I think building that muscle also builds identifying what your truth is and being able to trust that gut, that, source or whatever it is that you call it, intuition.
The closer I get to that place that it becomes... routine is the wrong word. I guess I could say routine, ritual. That is what it is for you. I think the closer I get to that place, I think the more that my gut becomes my ally. Because I think that's true. Like, that saying is so prevalent. Trust your gut. And then I was talking to Kae and Mel about that, and I was like, well, what? Sometimes, like, that scares me because sometimes my gut tells me some really bad things, and I'm like, oh no.
I wonder, though, is that really your gut, or is that your head via, your friend anxiety?
Yeah, that's why it's hard to, like, where does the soul reside? Like, what is the gut? What does that mean? Like, what is the difference between your head, your heart, and your gut? Like, for me, that's sort of difficult to differentiate, you know, because I have one voice in my head.
Sure.
And, you know, maybe it does represent different places, different things about me at different times. But yeah, no, I think that you're right, though. Like, I don't know if I can trust my gut right now necessarily. But I think the more I work on myself, you know, the more I work on intention and being present, the easier that will become to trust what I hear.
Sure.
You know?
Sure.
So
something else we talked about was literally just be kind. Just when in doubt, be kind. Nadia fires me up because she's such a pistol. So I also wrote, don't be an egotistical dick.
did she say those words?
She did not say those words.
Is that when she talked about walking out?
Yes, but just the way that she sort of conducts herself, we were talking about something like really sweet and kind and touching about be kind. The story of her wrapping her arms around this woman who's in distress. And then she's like, if I walk into your store and you don't greet me, I'm going to walk my ass out, get the fuck out of your store. Like, she just fired me up in that way. So I think for me, that this is not only be kind, but it's also to check yourself. Like, ego has a funny way of getting, you know, at the forefront of your mind, or getting in between you and another person, or tricking you with how you should conduct yourself, or whatever it may be. So staying, you know, steadfast to being kind, but also to be reflective about what is ego doing in this situation.
It can be hard to do, but I mean, that's comes back down to being present and to, you know, thinking before you speak.
Yeah,
That's hard to do.
I think that it's presence and also kind of thoughtfulness,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
Like the understanding that you just really have no idea what someone else's life is like. Everyone else's life is equally as complex as your own. And there's just no possible way to know what someone's upbringing was, what someone's current state is, what, you know, you just don't know.
And to think of that in the car when someone, you know, almost runs you off the road is very difficult to do. But it can be done. You know?
I want to circle back to that. One last theme, and then I'm going to come poke you about this.
Bitch, who is?
One last theme was self-care, right? Especially for men, but in general, whether it's you as an entrepreneur taking that time, or you as a busy person taking that time, or you as a human going about the world, that a huge, you know, takeaway of this entire reflective episode for me is that investment in yourself goes miles and miles. And if you're skimping out on that, you're losing a lot in other areas that you might not realize.
Yeah, I think we're too analytical nowadays. I think there's like too many metrics and things but like that. But I do believe that there's power in, and I think you have this, you know, not trying to plug Reorm, but I think that you have like the time audit. And like, you know, be honest with yourself about the time that you're spending every day. And like, look to see, are you giving yourself enough of that me time?
Sure.
And maybe like sometimes maybe you're giving yourself too much of it, you know?
This is a point where you and I totally diverge.
That's fine. I'm thinking of like, I know that Donnie and I have been in a place where, you know, we feel like it was definitely, what were we calling it? What was it? Were we calling it quality time? What are we talking about? Oh, self-care. Sorry. We definitely believe and still do like that like playing computer games together is self-care. Like that's our version of self-care. And I know that Tess was talking about, or Nadia, excuse me, was it Nadia or Tess? Nadia was talking about pedicures.
Nadia.
Yeah. And to me, that's not self-care because I just don't really care about getting a pedicure. I know where she was going with that though. And there was really a lot of power in that conversation. But for Donnie and I, it's like, you know, we played a lot of computer games back before my computer took a shit. And then I think we both got to the point now where we're like, okay, we were spending too much time playing games. Like, so that's my point though, is at some point, you know, and I think I'm getting down a rabbit hole with you're talking about self-care. I agree. I think that's really important. But I think doing that time audit and actually taking, you know, time and looking at the last week of your life and, you know, how much time you spent doing these specific things can really put a lot of your life into perspective. And it probably will, you're right, it probably will show you like I'm not giving myself enough time to do the things that I love to do. Or perhaps like I'm, you know, this part of my life is suffering because I'm giving myself too much time to do this one thing that maybe I need to dial back a little bit. Basically, I'm just saying the time audit is a cool thing that you came up with. That's not like revolutionary, but it is a really cool idea. just to see it on paper, you know?
Yeah, I think that where you and I diverge around the definition of self-care is, I see what you're saying about playing games with Donnie is self-care in the sense that the benefit that you're getting out of that is you're actually deepening your connection with Donnie, right? Like you're spending time with your friend, shooting the shit, playing games, getting closer, whatever.
Saving his life, you know?
Okay. But at the end of that 2-hour session or 6-hour session or whatever it becomes, how much better are you as a person going about the world? And that's what I mean about self-care is I'm not saying that all self-care has to be self-development, like meditation or whatever. But I am saying that for me, for my definition of self-care, there is an element of I have a finite battery to go out in the world and kick ass. And if I am not being intentional about how I recharge that battery, like for me, it's actually doing things that are 100% totally not productivity related.
Like a pedicure.
Like going and, having a cryotherapy session.
Playing Tetris.
Or going and, I mean, I don't even know if I think that in some ways, like me playing Tetris on the couch is self-care. And in some ways it's to my detriment, which is what you're saying, that it kind of has this like addictive element where you're dumping your brain with dopamine and you're like, but I just want to play like just one more match. And then 3 hours go by and you realize you've actually wasted time. Do you actually think that every single time you play Tetris that it was a waste of time? No, but I'm saying that I don't know that things that have the capacity to draw you in with that biochemical addiction or rush are actually self-care.
Okay. Interesting.
We could spend a whole other episode talking about self-care.
We could.
To wrap up this episode, I want to talk about things that we are actually going to do in our real lives moving forward and things that we're challenging you as the viewer, the listener, our friends, our strangers in our sphere to actually go do. One of them, I already said it earlier, is I'm challenging you this week to find that thing that is watering your own seed, which maybe it's therapy. Maybe it's downloading a meditation app that's free. Maybe it's watching a YouTube video. Maybe it's getting a self-development book. Another one for you specifically, mister, you talked about this presence and this understanding that everyone's lives are equally complex and taking that into consideration when someone cuts you off on the freeway. Let me just give you a brief context, a little peek behind the curtain of our marriage. If there's one time that we fight, it is in the car.
Yeah, it's true.
Specifically in the car when Elliot is driving.
I'm always driving.
I'm challenging you this
Listeners,
week.
what would you do if okay, so I drive all the time because Sam doesn't like to drive, but Sam always criticizes my driving. Don't you think that Sam should drive?
I should drive.
What do you think?
I should drive more.
She should probably drive more.
We'll fight less if I drive more.
It's true. Sam has trauma because she got in a car accident, but she was young, and her dad is also like the world's safest driver, aka like kind of annoying, honestly, doing like 55 and a 65, on the highway. And I'm the opposite.
You just drive like a bat out of hell, and you give no shit. Like,
and I have not been in one accident since June. That's actually not true, and it wasn't my fault. I got rear-ended. I haven't been in any accidents. I haven't got pulled over in 5 years, man, or 6 or 7 actually. Sorry.
Anyway, the point we could really go down the rabbit hole on this. The point of this is I am challenging you specifically in the next week plus to take that into consideration, to drive a little bit less like a bat out of hell and a little bit more like a kind, loving human.
Yes, ma'am. Speaking of driving, today's what? What's today?
The 7th, Monday.
In 11 days, we will be in Paris. And as soon as we get off the plane in Paris, we are going to the rental car spot and getting a car and driving straight to northern France. And that will be potentially something that you and I can talk about on the next episode when people are like, oh, so I'm just trying to manifest all these comments on our YouTube videos eventually and building a community. And someone's like, so Elliot, how was the drive? Sam, how was the drive?
Yeah, listeners, keep us accountable.
Hopefully, we can report that I drove really well. I'm going to get to drive standard for the first time in a really long time. Are we driving on the right side of the road? Is it the right side of the road?
No, you just drive,
regular?
Yeah, you drive regular on the right side of the road.
So that should be pretty easy.
They'll be fine.
Just like a tiny little Fiat, probably.
Probably. Mm-hmm.
Hyped.
It'll be really fun. Do you have any challenges for me?
A challenge for you in the next like week?
It can be whatever.
Oh yeah,
timeline.
definitely stop playing Tetris while you're watching all of your videos on how to build your business.
Okay.
Because I'm like, what did he say right there? And you're like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, oh, so you're not even listening to it. So like, what's the point of playing Tetris and watching this video that you spent tons of money on?
Okay.
That's my challenge to you. Stop playing Tetris when you're listening to those videos. Otherwise, have at it. You're really good at Tetris.
Honestly, I am.
Yeah. So
I'm on level like 265.
I do applaud you for that, but just time and place.
Yep. I hear that.
That's the epitome of Sam, right? Like that's how good she's doing in life, in my opinion. That my one suggestion is to maybe just stop playing Tetris a little bit less than you normally do. So yeah, that's the best thing I could think of.
We also have one for the two of us, which is in a very short period of time, we're going on a trip. In our episode with Kae and Mel, we briefly talked about Vienna. Mm-hmm. We are going to Vienna, baby.
We is.
So we just bought, obviously for those of you watching rather than listening, we have this gigantic podcast setup. It's not backpacking / carry-on bag friendly. So we just bought some wireless mics, and our goal in an upcoming episode, or maybe even a couple of upcoming episodes, is to really challenge ourselves to connect with the people that we meet in a country that's not our home country.
We could talk about this forever. It is really hard to meet people. I really think that I'm here I'm thinking about myself as like an entrepreneur, and I'm going to obviously relate this to exactly to what you're talking about, but like coming here and like knowing where to go to like meet people, to build friendships and build my business, like it's overwhelming. A lot of the time it's overwhelming. Like I think about Albuquerque and how easy it is to go back. Like it's not overwhelming because I have so many established connections and relationships, I can meet people through all these other people that I know. Not the same here. And we're getting there. And we're taking this 3-week vacation to Europe that we've been saving so much for, saving up for so long for, and I've been planning it for so long, and it's almost here. And that's really exciting. I'm really proud of us. And I was just telling Sam, like, how can we, I think it's like the grass is greener thing. Like I'm always thinking that something is, you always want what you don't have, right? And I'm like, we have great times on vacation, but like, how can we have a better time? Like, how can we have a better time than just like, getting up and going to a coffee shop and then like walking around and taking some photos and then getting lunch and then doing the same thing every single day. Like, and I'm like, what do other people do? Like, how do you have more fun? Like, what are we supposed to do? And I think that the podcast has offered like this very unique opportunity for us in Europe that we always had, but now like it's like this new door, this new perspective. It's like, okay, like now we have a reason to want to meet new people, to interview, to get perspective. Like we really want to know more about these places that we've never been. Languages that we don't know, and people we don't understand.
And we also want to poke a little bit deeper at this question around, we talked about America being an individualistic society that really does applaud and encourage that. What does it look like for other countries, for other societies, for other people who've grown up in a totally different cultural background?
Right.
How does human connection look to them?
Right. So we're trying to find ways to do that. And I think that like there's like, Airbnb, like the experiences, like people have been basically saying, like people our friends that have been in Europe are saying like take the free guided tours, walking tours. That's a really good way to meet people. Klaus was saying like stay in a hostel. We're not really doing that, but he said that was a really great way to meet people. Airbnb, there are experiences that you can buy or that are free. And so we're really trying to take ourselves out of our comfort zone and meet people that, live in those areas, and also maybe meet some expats, meet some Americans that live there and get their perspective. And I don't know if you guys know who Nathaniel Drew is, but he's a YouTuber, content creator, and he was in Vienna. And one of his episodes quite a while ago, he kind of did the same thing. He went to Vienna and he wanted to learn more about the people in Vienna. And I love Nathaniel Drew. One of our manifestations, one of our meditations is that we will get to meet him. He lives in Paris. We'll get to meet him and interview him somehow. He's a busy guy. He's, pretty popular guy on YouTube.
You can find him on YouTube at Nathaniel Drew.
He might not be there, but we really think that this podcast would resonate quite a bit with him. He's just looking for, for human connection and looking to find out what life is like. What does it mean? What are we doing here? And so that's been like definitely a source of inspiration for us doing this in Europe. We're
really inspired by his quest to answer really big questions. And I think that there aren't many, he asks kind of a lot of questions in different ways related to the human experience. And it's very similar kind of to what we're trying to do here. We're seeking to answer one specific question about like human connection and its effect on our overall happiness, our overall experience. So if you have any connections to Nathaniel Drew and you can get us in contact.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about that while you're talking. It's like, well, none of this is released yet. So I don't know if you know, audience, but like I'm like crippling anxiety around like starting a new venture and then like seeing it like, okay, like what is our logo going to look like on Instagram? Like what is the thumbnail going to look like? Like what is our branding going to look like? Like how are we going to post? What is our marketing strategy? What do these reels, what are they supposed to look like? Like what kind of questions can we ask our audience? All those things really overwhelm me. And I'm thinking like this would be a good opportunity, even though we don't have any episodes, it'd be a good opportunity to like make the Instagram page live and to ask people what kind of questions they would want to hear us ask people in Europe, just to get some ideas, sure. some differing perspectives from different people that we know or don't even know that have just caught the Instagram page by surprise. So yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of that. I want hopefully a lot of audience interaction, questions that we didn't think of that we could ask folks that we don't know yet. So that's exciting. I fully plan on that being our next, maybe it's not like in chronological order of the next episode that we do, but I fully plan on that being at least the next
in this season
episode or second episode that we have, which will be people in Europe, some new friends that we make.
About that. Yeah. So taking all of those nuggets, pieces of advice, action items, challenges, both for us, we're taking those moving forward, thinking about them in the next couple of weeks, but we also challenge you. Let us know how it goes. Shoot us a DM, send us an email. We want to know, what did you challenge yourself to do? How did it work out for you?
Sam and I want to thank you so much for listening to Something More Human. If you're enjoying the podcast and want to support us, there are plenty of no-cost, minimal effort ways you can do so.
For starters, you can subscribe to the show on your favorite listening platform. You can leave us a 5-star review, drop us a comment with a topic you'd like to hear us discuss in an upcoming episode, and you can also keep up with us on Instagram and TikTok. Give us a follow there at Something More Human. Thanks so much.
Thank you.